Welcome to this episode of Manufacturing Talk Radio. This is our live broadcast that we do with the Institute for Supply Management. We do two of their reports. This is the report on manufacturing, which is hosted by Tim Fiore, and joining me is Lou Weiss, who's the founder of Manufacturing Talk Radio. And we're going to hear today from Tim Fiore why this report is not the beginning of the end. We're not going off a cliff. Things are just fine. Remember, we're measuring month over month, not month over the edge. Tim, welcome to the show.
Yeah, good to be here, Tim. Lou, good to see you guys.
Good seeing you guys. Good seeing you. So it's not doomsday.
No, it's not doomsday. So we definitely underperformed and we disappointed. I mean, coming in at 53 was a bit of a shock, no doubt about it. But as usual, the 10 sub-indexes really tell the story. We've had a demand-driven supply-constrained expansion. Demand is still there, but it's not accelerating. The suppliers did perform better in the month of June compared to May, and there's been pretty much a steady improvement over the last 3 months, not only from a delivery rate standpoint, but also from a pricing standpoint. Prices are coming down. What's still sticking really is lead times. Lead times are still at record. I'm waiting for those to relax because currently people have order books that are probably 2 and 3 times what their normally fill rate is. And so if orders start to kind of fall off a little bit, they're falling off well outside their normal order book environment. And I think that's what's really going on the demand side. We contracted slightly on demand. Because of that, we burned into our backlog. But fundamentally, the reason I think we're still very good is that people are still hiring. I had a 9-to-1 hire to fire ratio, down from 10-to-1 in May. They're still having difficulty in hiring. So if the panelist companies were concerned about demand, they put hiring freezes in place immediately. And there's absolutely no indication in any of this report that there's any kind of a hiring freeze at all. And in fact, you see the contraction on the employment number that still reflects the fact that they cannot staff the factory floor appropriately because we still have too high of a quits rate. So, I think that was it. 53, lowest number in probably a couple of years since we started to climb out. The supplier delivery number came down pretty heavily, almost 9 points. That contributed heavily to a 53. If you went back to the prior month supplier delivery number, the 53 would probably turn into 55. And we also had the combined effect here of new orders not growing. But I think that's still really, as I've said for the last 3 months, buyers are pausing. And they're pausing appropriately. The lead times are well out beyond records and prices are coming down. So I wouldn't be committing, 2.5 times my normal lead times at high prices. I'd sit and wait. And I think that's what the panelist community is doing.
Regarding inventories remaining the same for the most part, it seems as though that up until now, because of COVID, because of a whole lot of other issues, that people have been overbuying to make sure that they have stock. Then the new orders drop. They still got high inventory. Production hasn't changed a whole lot, so they're not buzzing through because you don't have enough employees. So all in all, I would say that this is a great report.
Yeah, so we definitely all over ordered, and that's for delivery some point in the future, depending on the industry sector. We've also over received, back to your point about overbought. It's really over receiving because it's a mismatch of stuff. And if you get 100 pieces that you need and you can get the 98 and you only want 2 of the 98, but you don't want to have to worry about them the following month, so you take 4 of the 98. That dries up your raw material and intermediate goods products. And you're racing for those other 2 pieces to finish the product. In the meantime, work in process inventory expands because you make it 80% of the way through the product and you sit to the side waiting for those 2 pieces. That's still going on. It's going on in a heavy way. So the manufacturing inventory number at 56 is a good number. I'm glad to see it stayed at that 56 level. If it had come down, end of the month, end of the quarter kind of issue, and it had come down closer to 50, we would have gotten closer to 50 really on the PMI number, which would have been a whole nother thing to explain. So I would expect the manufacturing inventory number is probably going to drop in the month of July. It seems like the month following the close of a quarter, we see a step down in the manufacturing inventory, but it's only temporary and it goes back up. But my point is that we still can't hire enough people on the factory floor. And the panelists are still trying to hire people at the same extent they've been trying to do it for the last year and a half. So there's really no problem here. Just because the new order number came down, it's a function of over ordering. And because I'll tell you, in my experience, the minute there's some sign of moderate to near term kind of demand fall off, you're putting a hiring freeze in place immediately. If you're going to hire people, you're planning at least to have work for at least a year, because nobody wants to lay off factory workers within that 12-month time frame. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, considering also the machine tool order index is I think the highest it's been in a long time. I think it's at 53 something, and that's a good prognosticator of what's coming in the next 4, 5, 6 months. So I don't see where all the negative is unless you start listening to, and forgive me, my brethren in the media world, you guys are going to cause panic, because in the news tonight, I'm sure they're going to say, oh my God, things are collapsing.
Yeah, so the word that I picked up, I haven't had a chance to really watch it, but I've been talking with a lot of media people, and not only the new order number contracting spooked them quite a bit, they're now interpreting the contraction on employment at 47 to be a harbinger of layoffs. And my point is, what's the difference? Last month we were 49. The month before that we were 50. We talked about that. The issue is we can't get enough people. What do you think? It changed overnight? In the space of 4 weeks, we went from can't get enough people to we're laying them all off. That's what happened in the pandemic. And even then we weren't really searching for that many people back in January, February of 2020. So, hey, everybody just needs to calm down. The Fed's going to grow interest rates at some point. I honestly and firmly believe that he's not going to throw us into a recession this year. As we were talking earlier in the show, I would much rather have to pay extra money for goods than not have a paycheck at all. And that's when you see emotions really start, is when people start getting worried about their jobs. And this whole thing, recession, demand destruction, stop it. And the manufacturing side, we're still doing fine. The service economy is still growing. It's still coming out. Let it kind of take its course. I don't see anything happening here. And if you look at that whole rule about I'm going to hire for 12 months out, what that says is that the manufacturing community doesn't think there's anything really negative until the second half of next year.
I think that we have to use your quote. Tom Fiore says, everybody just calm down.
Everybody just calm down. Calm down.
That's it. That's going to be the show notes for this episode. So
Tim,
I'm sorry, Tim, go ahead.
I want to have Tim walk us through his inputs, outputs. He's got a couple of great slides he shares with our audience that he doesn't have time to do on mainstream media. So if you've got those up and ready, Tim, I'd love to see them.
I'm sorry, it was chaotic this morning.
Oh, okay.
Let me kind of walk you through it. So absolutely, Tim. So I bucket things, the 10 sub-indexes I put into 3 buckets: demand, inputs, and consumption. Demand is the new orders, new export orders, backlog, and customer inventory. So let's talk about that first. New export orders are absolutely weak, reflecting the situation, the uncertainty in Europe. And China, I saw the China PMI yesterday. It's still pathetic. So China has its own issues. It's not helping. It's definitely not helping here. And our international customers are not helping our new order rates. So okay, it's a non-issue. They're not contracting, but they're really not growing. The backlog came down simply because the new order levels have come down in the last couple of months. So we're burning into backlog as we're consuming and converting material. All right, that's a natural thing. I don't think we're going to get really to a negative, but we'll see in the next couple of months. The customer inventory number, which is a reflection of our panelist companies' products on their customer shelves, is still well below 40. I think we're 24 months below 40, and we're sitting here right now at 35. I mean, we're up 2.5 points. 30 is way, way, way too low. And I think if that number finally gets to 48, 46 to 48, which is pretty healthy, we're still 2 to 3 months away from that us getting from here to there. So demand, I think, is still solid. Like I said, the new order number, I think, is a function of over ordering. And combined with long lead times and high prices, buyers are pausing their way. Okay, so let's talk about the input side. This has been a demand-driven, input-constrained expansion. The input side is showing improvement. It has been showing improvement. It continues to show improvement. You would expect it to show improvement, finally. I mean, we've been 18 months, I think, or longer, handcuffed because of suppliers. So the input side is supplier deliveries, it's manufacturing inventory, it's prices, and it's imports. So let's take the import number, 50.7. That's a bit of a disappointment. I can't tell you what the issue is right now. There's still a lot of concern out there on the port situation here, not only with China being shut down for so long, but also with the fact that the longshoreman contract expired yesterday. So they're no longer bound by the rules, and one of those was no strike. So, okay, so that's all open-ended. That's gonna go on for 2 or 3 months. The panelists have a lot of concern about what that may mean over the next quarter. In the case of prices, we've shown a steady decline in prices, which is good. You can't run at 85, 90 forever. You don't want to. This is, this is what's changed the Fed's opinion from we need full employment to we need to stop inflation. So our prices number coming down, I think the number is like 10% of the respondents said that prices decreased in June compared to May. It's either 8 or 10%. The prior month it was 5. So we're showing steady improvement. If you look at the commodity markets, copper's down probably because of China's weakness. Steel prices are now below 1,000. Aluminum prices are dropping. That's all really good. I mean, and we're still well above the historical norms here. So, okay, we want that to happen. And then we've already talked about the inventory piece. The supplier delivery number at 57, I would hope it's going to stay in that range now, 55 to 60. That's healthy. That's healthy tension. It allows suppliers to reinvest. It's good. So I think on the input side, we got to kind of where we want to be, except the import number needs to grow to the 54, 55 level, and the prices need to continue to get down into the lower 60 level. So then we talk about the consumption piece, conversion, the output, and that's production and employment. So let's take employment first. We contracted again, second month in a row we contracted, but as I said at the beginning of the show, it's not because we're not trying. It's not because we're furloughing people. It's not because we're laying them off. It's not even because we have hiring freezes. It's because we are dealing with a high rate of quits combined with the fact that we're now in the summer months and we did see more indications of early retirements. So, we ended up with a contracting employment base on the factory floor and disappointment because that's holding back the production number. Production number was stable at 55 May to June. Bit of a disappointment. I'm still waiting for it to get up in the high 50s, low 60s. It can't get there without employment growing too. But I'll tell you, I do not expect employment to get anywhere near a 55. We're going to be in the same environment now for a ton of reasons until the Fed does do something. If we can't get the prices number down to really cause a contraction in economic activity, which I do not believe will be this year. As I've said in the last couple of shows, I don't believe that they're going to intervene in the economy here in an election year. That would just be so devastating to the political status and the ebbs and flows. So the steady move of increasing interest rates, I think we're still below 2, aren't we? Fed funds rate, we're not even at 3 yet. I mean, right. Wouldn't even start to worry about it until we get to 3.5. So I think that's kind of the story. We still can't hire enough. The turnover rate is killing us, and a bunch of early retirements hurt us too. That's why we contracted probably more in June than we did in May. And the production number, we took 3 points off of that for seasonal adjustment factors. And I would agree with that because you do have the vacation period starting here, and the seasonal factors try to keep the number relatively even throughout the whole 12-month period. So I think we had a good month. I'm disappointed in the 53 number, and you could argue it's either because the supplier deliveries came down so quickly and they're delivering better. More panelists reported better deliveries than we've seen in a long time. Or the fact that buyers are pausing placing orders because they're still at excessive lead times and still at higher prices than they really want to pay, 2 to 3 times out what they normally schedule for orders. So that's it.
So would you accept the fact that the 53 number may be somewhat illusionary?
Well, I mean, for guys like us who study this thing and walk through the detail, Yeah, absolutely. For, the general population that just looks at a headline number and doesn't really understand what makes it up, no, it's real to them. I mean, I think that's how the market reacted. Even though we try to do a really good job getting information out to the media community, there's a lot of people who take this stuff and project it, and they just look at the number and they don't know the story. You have to know how you got here, and you have to know the underlying issues. That's why I really enjoy the chair's role so much, because I get thousands of comments every month, and the numbers along with the comments make the story. And when I've got 85% of the panelists saying that they're still hiring and they're having difficulty hiring, that does not jive with the fact that demand went away. And sometimes you get timing disconnects in business, but the one thing I learned through my career is the minute that demand goes away, you stop hiring right away, because you don't want to add to your problem. And it's pretty much immediate. And the supply people would know it if that's what was going on. And there's no indication in the report that there's any kind of hiring freezes happening.
This is why we have you on our show, to explain to people, calm down, everything's okay.
Calm down. Yeah, this is why the chair role is a fun role. So you get the comments and you get the numbers.
So talking about the comments, let's talk about the comments from some of the panelists that you have in your report. What are they basically saying?
Well, so, I go through it. I look for the top industry sectors that performed in that period. And I always include the big six, chemicals, computers, transportation, machinery, food and beverage, and petroleum and coal products. Those are the current big six. I always include a comment in there about them, because that's 70% of the manufacturing economy. And then I'll look at the other manufacturing sectors that performed well in the period. And that's what you see in those comments. And, you don't see anything in there about layoffs, furloughs, we froze hiring, nothing, right? So
not at all.
I tried to put a sprinkling of there is some demand concern. They're saying demand softening. And we first talked about it last month. About 10% of my headline comments said that they're seeing some amount of softening. And when I dug into it, it appeared it was showing up in chemicals. I think it was fabricated metal products. And there was a third one, I forget it. Oh, non-metallic materials. Most of those are a lot of them go into building products. Chemicals especially goes everywhere. But okay, this month we had 17% say that they see some softening. The softening doesn't mean that I don't have work to do this month, next month, the month after. Right. It really means that I get these massive order streams out there to my own customers, and my customers are not continuing to add to that excessively long lead times. They've decided to pause. So I think it's all kind of connected to that, as a good buyer, we've got 24 months into this expansion. Somewhere about 4 to 6 months into the initial period, we all started to overorder, because that's what you do. You lock up as much as you can, because somebody else will take it from you. And we've ended up with this huge amount of backlog, really, in orders that's reflected by the long lead times in capital equipment and raw material. You can see it right in the report there. We're at records on cap equipment and raw material. And that's because we all overordered. So, all right, we still have high prices, higher than normal. They're starting to come down. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. And then my suppliers are getting better, which means, all right, they're staffing up appropriately. And at some point, their lead times will start to come down, and then the prices will come down with it, and I'll start placing orders again.
I'm so excited. Really. And All Metals and Forge Group, of course, is into manufacturing forged products. And we have had, not to be braggadocious, but we have had a very successful run these last 6-8 months, to the point that we're making some record numbers. And, prices notwithstanding, because people are paying the elevated prices because they're still concerned about disruption in supply chain and so on and so forth. That's still not going away. Have you heard much of that from your panelists about the logistics and supply chain issues?
Yeah, on the transportation side, it definitely appears to be easing somewhat. Like our ocean freight comments are about half of what they were in May. Mm-hmm. And the comments are primarily around the ability to get containers and schedule loads. So it seems the ocean freight seems to be diminishing, but we'll see. We'll see what happens here with the longshoremen and the true impacts of China and the fact that they were shut down for several months. And they continue to have these rolling, they've doubled down on their policy of locking everybody up, which has got to be chaotic, in manufacturing business over there. Unless you can house them all on your site, which they do a lot of that. It's like the old days when you had dormitories and you fed everybody and you kept them in the little city there. We call them towns here. They probably call them towns there too. You're still going to have that issue. On the road freight side, we're down on that too, but not as much of a disruptor. Give you a feeling for that. So, in the supplier delivery section where most of my transportation comments show up, we had in the month of April, 39% of the supplier delivery comments were transportation related, including ocean freight. And in the month of May, it came down to 32%, and now we're at 21%. So there seems to be an easing of that too. And I've always said that transportation is really the early indicator of manufacturing activity, which is really the early indicator of services, which in totality is the US economy. So we seem to be moving towards normality on transportation too. And we should continue to do that as long as we don't have a big impact, due to the port issues on the West Coast and coming out of China. If that shows up in the next month or two, then you'll see that whole transportation activity get a lot more complicated, and you'll see the supplier delivery number go back up above 60 for sure.
Within the next couple of days, we're going to have Anthony Nieves, who's the committee chair of the services report. So we'll see, where the totality of the two reports are in sync with one another, and more than likely they are. There is one thing that I'm seeing that I'm rather surprised at, and I haven't seen it for a couple of years, even prior to COVID, is that I'm getting notices in emails from manufacturers who are giving us shutdown dates where they're shutting down for 2-week vacation time. And that sort of surprised me. They got a lot of inventory. They've got a backlog. I'm surprised that they're shutting down, especially when they don't have enough workers in the first place. And now you're going to shut down for 2 weeks. Yeah, you have to do maintenance, but you could do maintenance, in the second shift.
Well, there's two competing philosophies around that. You shut down for 2 weeks, everybody goes home, then everybody comes back, and you start up again. Or you let everybody take vacation throughout the 3 months of the summer period, and you're short shifted through all of that. And right now, being able to fill those gaps if you're short shifted is pretty much impossible. So do you want to operate for the whole summer inefficiently, or you just want to take the pain for 2 weeks and then come back up and manage it? There's two different opinions on it, and I've operated in both. In today's environment, I guess I would probably say shut down, because you get enough confusion going on anyway. You don't need to introduce your own from people taking vacations.
That's a good thought.
Well, Tim, you've made a very interesting point, and Lou is experiencing it, that when you're sitting on record backlog and you can't find employees, that employment number dipping a little bit is not an indication that you're going to lay people off when you've got so much work to do. You got to get caught up eventually, but laying people off is not the solution.
Yeah, it's not the answer. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, but you look at the PMI report, employment contracted 47 to 47. All right, that must mean companies are shedding people. No, pretty much with every one of these numbers, there's always a counter argument. No, what it means is, the fact is, I don't have as many people on the factory floor in June that I did in May. And why is that? Well, it's not because I let them go. It's because they just keep quitting on me, and I can't replace them fast enough. That's just kind of it. And this month, like I said, we did have more comments on the retirement side. I think this last couple of months, May and April, like 5 points of that 30 some odd point turnover thing was early retirements. It was 6 points. Now it's 8. So there was an increase really in early retirements reported, and not surprising. If you're going to opt out, you're going to do it in the early summer. You're not going to do it in December or winter time, so you can sit in the house.
I'm going to throw you a little bit of a left hook. Do you think that, and it's totally off the mark, do you think that if the U.S. dealt with its immigration policy differently than we are, that perhaps we wouldn't have the not job shortage, but people shortage that we're presently having?
Well, I mean, immigrants have been a great source of resources for us forever.
Right.
And I mean, and if the population grows, GDP goes with it. I mean, there's a rule of thumb. So, you know, consequently, if the population doesn't grow, neither does GDP, unless you can factor in some amount of productivity efficiency, which, you know, we do. But, you know, the clear rule of thumb is as population grows, we produce more and we consume more. So if we shut down immigration to the point where we're really not growing, I mean, I don't want to really look like Japan, you know, or even China now. They're not, because they're not really societies that allow people to come in and go. They struggle. I mean, even the forecast on China is that it's got population decline, you know, massive amounts of people, but they're not growing their people. So yeah, and you know, hey, we need an effective energy policy in this country, an effective one. You know, just whispering in the back room about we really didn't mean what we said. That I don't think really counts. I think there needs to be some solid plans here to acknowledge the fact that fossil fuels are here with us for another who knows how long, but they're not going away tomorrow. And you know, if you try to get them to go away tomorrow, we're all paying the price for that. And we need an immigration policy because we need to continue to grow the U.S. population at a 2 to 3% clip. And you know, the self-generation rate is not there. At the last I saw, we're not. If we shut everything off, if we close all the borders and leave anybody in, we would be a declining population.
Correct.
Which is not healthy. And,
so
America's never been that way.
So to take this conversation to a next step or the next level means we have to go political on the discussion, which we're not going to do.
No, we're not going to do that. No, we just made the point. Energy policy, immigration policy. We need those. And,
right.
Yeah, it doesn't appear that there's any on the near-term horizon, unfortunately.
Yes, clearly there have been countries who have artificially lowered their birth rate, and Roe v. Wade was just overturned. 20% of the population of the United States, it would have been 20% greater with 63 million Americans. China did a one-child policy for about 20 years and then went, oops, that's not working out for us. They can't hire workers. So there's another area where countries have hurt themselves in their population growth. You're right, Tim. The United States is headed for zero population growth at this time without immigration. And you're also correct that you can't get GDP growth without population growth. They do go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So sum it up for us. What does the GDP look like? And I don't know that I've heard a number yet for the second quarter. According to what you've seen, as we've seen 57, 56, 53 reports coming out for the Institute for Supply Management.
Yeah, so yeah, here's the other rub. So technically we had a declining expansion, GDP expansion in Q1. If you remember, the reason for that is that we had an excessive amount of imports that entered into the country in the first quarter of 2022. The reason we had that was because we couldn't get that product in the second half of 2021. So we had to shift across measurement periods that put us negative in Q1. Now here we are in Q2, and I'm hearing numbers, you know, tenths, negative tenths. Okay, that's almost like rounding error, but fine. So we may very well be in a technical recession. But, and hey, call it. It doesn't feel like a recession to me. I think I know recessions to me feel like layoffs, negative earnings reports, massive restructures going on. And that, yeah, announcements from Fortune 500 companies, they're going to lay off 20,000 people and restructure. That's not happening. So even if we end up in a technical recession, it doesn't feel like a recession to me. And there's a lot of people, I talked to a lot of people months ago on this whole, they've been laying out the groundwork that this might be coming. You really cannot measure a recession just by 2 quarters of successive negative. For me, when we start, when the unemployment rate gets up to 8 or 9%, that's a recession. And And I don't think that anybody's going to drive that in 2022. If we remain at high wages and ever escalating wages and high commodity prices, something might have to be done in 2023. But I just, like I said from the beginning, I just don't see that in 2022. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
That's another great quote from the.
Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
So calm down.
Right.
Yeah, right. So calm down. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Tim, thanks for joining us. We appreciate the insight you offer going into detail in this report. You're absolutely right. Look past the top line number, look into the detail behind it, get the real story, which you can only get here on Manufacturing Talk Radio, by the way. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, I hope I explained it well to your listeners. Talk to you guys in August. Take care. Have a great 4th.
Yes, you as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. And Lou, we certainly enjoyed that conversation. You know, we have been talking for some time about the R word. We even did an issue in Manufacturing Outlook e-zine, which you publish, about the recession and is it coming? And the consensus of opinion is it's not. So Tim Fiore's right, calm down.
That's right. That's right. It's not coming yet. And if it does come, there is such a thing as a soft recession. So let's not panic. Let's not freak out. Let's enjoy the business that we're getting. Let's enjoy inflation. I really enjoy inflation. So the wife will ask me for a couple of extra bucks for shopping, but there's always American Express credit cards.
Yeah, that's right.
Run up.
That's right. Well, we want to thank all of our listeners for tuning into this live broadcast. When you're surfing the web, stop by ismworld.org, which issues these reports. Also go to jacketmediaco.com. And we would encourage you to go to manufacturingoutlook.com, which is where you can subscribe to the magazine.
Free.
Manufacturing Outlook for free. That's correct, Lou. For free. It's filled with a lot of great content. You really should thumb through it and see what you've got. And as always, thank you for listening to this episode of Manufacturing Talk Radio.